Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to feature my recent conversation with Nikolaus Jacobs. Nikolaus, or Niko as his classmates know him, is a second-year student in our Full-Time MBA Class of 2022. And he and I recently connected to talk more about his MBA journey. Niko is originally from Germany, came to the US for undergrad, spent some time in Ireland before landing here in Charlottesville. And we talk with him not only about his MBA journey, but also about how his career interests have evolved and how he got interested in corporate ventures. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So without further ado, here is my interview with Nikolaus Jacobs. Niko, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Brett. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. How are you doing?
Doing excellent. It's my second year at Darden, about to graduate. So there's lots going on, last classes to finish and lots of activities to look ahead of. And yeah, doing great as well on the personal side and really can't complain. How are you?
Maybe a little bit looking back, looking forward. It's maybe a swirl of emotions. How do you feel? Do you start to feel that sense of accomplishment, like I've just done something that's pretty tough?
I would say there's a crying eye and a smiling eye, right? The crying eye in the sense that there were so many good memories I already have had at Darden, and so many more to look forward to in the next weeks. That includes, anything like the core in the first year. That includes the amazing off-campus events, on-campus events, just the people that I engage with on a daily basis, the classroom, the professors, and then kind of also excited eye in order to looking forward what's ahead of us, and me, and personally, but also professionally, and really excited to kind of leverage what I learned from Darden, but also just kind of continue the relationships I made here. And so it's, to come back to your question, I would say it's a good feeling. I wouldn't say I'm probably more excited for the challenges ahead than I'm proud of myself, to maybe answer your question.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, part of business school is coming to gain this education, this degree to go on to do bigger and better things. So that sounds like entirely appropriate. And I will say for me, this is always a busy time of year here in April and in early May. Try to catch up with everybody before they head out of town, whether they're graduating or they're first year students rounding into their second year, getting ready to go do busy summer internships. So it's a very active time for your podcast hosts.
Yeah, I can imagine. I try to catch up with some professors before I leave, and I can totally echo that.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit more about you and your background, where you're from, and what you do before coming to Darden.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in northern Germany. Born in Bremen, raised in Hamburg. My family is origins is in the coffee industry. So after high school, I worked for 2 years at a coffee trader in Hamburg, just to kind of understand it better. I'm a more practical person. And so I really wanted to first see what the world looks like, how it works before starting to study. And so after the 2 years, I was like, okay, I look forward to seeing the academic side and some of, the background of how things work. And then so I decided to pivot a little bit, did my bachelor at the University of San Francisco, partially because I wanted to be part of this vibrant community around Silicon Valley, dove in pretty deeply in the VC community, did some internship around that, ended up graduating in marketing international business, and then joined Google in Ireland, and worked there, and then pretty quickly left that to join Darden, and then arrived at Darden in August 2020 in the midst of the pandemic, and it was from the start on an amazing experience.
So a lot of different locations throughout that journey. Obviously, northern Germany and Hamburg, San Francisco, to Ireland, to Charlottesville.
Yeah.
Had you always thought about an MBA? Was that something that you knew that you always wanted to do?
To be honest, yes. Like my family always says the only thing that can be taken away from you is education, right? So even though I'm a very practical person, I always knew it makes sense in the long run to learn, to really learn things, and that will never be taken away from you and will pay off in the long term, no matter what happens. And so I kind of used jumping around, discovering different parts of life, different locations, to really understand what I want, and then use education as kind of the leverage to jump onto the next level and really get where I wanted to be. And I hope that, I'm very certain that my education, my bachelor as well as my master, will not pay only, in terms of the next couple of years, but really for the next 20, 30 years. I hope to look back and use that leverage. And so to come back again, I think the MBA was always in my mind, and it's kind of the perfect master to channel all the different experience I had and like kind of funnel them and close them up to really then get going and do what I wanted to do, and do that at a fast pace, and have the impact I want to have.
How did you get interested in Darden specifically?
So different, influences, but I loved the case study method, and because it is so practical, and I'm a person, I always have to see the real implications. And so I visited some other universities, and I spoke to other people from other universities, and the fact that it's all based on practical things really kind of helped me to understand why it's necessary to learn this. Sometimes you sit in a classroom, most certainly I feel that way. I sit in a classroom and I learn certain things and I'm thinking to myself, how is that applicable? And at Darden, this is most certainly true. And it's already so many times where over the summer, but also now when I work, I can reference the case and kind of similar problems and apply some of those tools I learned throughout my time at Darden. And so it's kind of like a library in my head in terms of cases, and then potential tools from those cases I can apply to that problem. And it's just like itself the skill to understand a problem and be able to summarize in, like, say, 3 sentences is something really real that will continue throughout life. And so I think the case study method is therefore something I really enjoy and thought is the best kind of way for me to gain my knowledge.
Well, you mentioned just starting out, engaging with your family's coffee business, that you were a very practical person. And so the Darden education and Darden faculty will talk about this all the time, that their research is very closely tied to actual practitioners. It's not ivory tower, like some sort of abstract theory. This is how business looks, what actual practitioners are doing. Obviously, that bleeds into the classroom, which also has this focus on practicality and application and making a decision. So I can imagine that would appeal to you.
Exactly. I think at the end of the day, business is not, magic. At the end of the day, it's just solving real problems and coming up with a better solution than there was before. And if you're able to find out what the real problem is and then come up with the solution, then you're successful in business. And it's so like you have to challenge the status quo, and the case study helps you to get that skill of filtering out what the real problem is, then coming up with tools to either mitigate it or solve it. And so that I think the case study really helps in order to define that skill in order to solve real world problems.
The other thing, if a faculty member was here on this podcast with us, I think they would note is your point around having a library of cases in your mind, the way that the case method works. And the thing that they would mention is, our brains are hardwired for stories as humans. That architecture of having a story, a narrative around a concept. I use this tool to help solve this particular problem. In this case, that had a protagonist, and all these details about it. It just makes the information so much stickier than a lecture where somebody was just telling you, here's what you need to know, and this is how this works. And so what you shared about the library, I think, is a really, really cool visualization of how that works for students and alumni.
Yeah, no, I think I can only echo that. That makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of exactly my point. Yeah.
Yeah, we run into alumni all the time at admissions events, and they still remember the cases, which is fascinating to me from some mental aspect. So you have been in some large cosmopolitan places. Obviously lived in the United States, spent grew up in Europe, spent time in Ireland as well. How do you think about coming to Charlottesville? Was Charlottesville an unknown quantity to you? How did you learn about Charlottesville?
Yeah, it was definitely unknown because, I didn't have the time to visit Charlottesville. And then the pandemic hit too. And so before that, I didn't really have time to visit Charlottesville, also because it's much easier to fly from Ireland to DC or New York or Chicago or XYZ and then not take another plane to Charlottesville or drive. So I didn't really have a lot of expectations. I heard from many students how amazing the community is and the city, and that it basically has everything to offer, but also not be too overwhelming. And so I came with, but to be honest, you hear that from a lot of people that always the place, the sales struggles are real. And so I wasn't too sure how exactly it's going to turn out, but I came down here and my partner, she at that time was at another school and they were all virtual. So we were actually down here together and we loved it. It's the perfect amount of community, nature. You have restaurants that are, good. You have all kinds of grocery stores. We have really everything you need and more. And so it turned out to be really a lovely, lovely place. And one of the places we're definitely going to miss once we graduated.
So did you come to Darden with a very formed idea of what you wanted to do from a career standpoint, or were you more exploring a few different options and pathways for yourself?
I had different options in mind, but I had probably like 3 options in mind, and it was one of the 3 that I pursued. So I kind of had a North Star that guided me and helped me kind of to stay focused and not jump on another wagon. It was still relatively open, but I kind of had my 3 options.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that North Star? And the reason I asked the question, Niko, is this is something that we hear a lot from our career colleagues and also from second-year students in particular as they share advice related to career, because there is so much opportunity that hits students early, and you can feel like you're pulled in a zillion directions. And so the more engagement you can have around where you'd like to go, and having that North Star is important, particularly when you have to make trade-offs. You can't do everything. Yeah,
no, that's most certainly true. Everyone has to figure out where, what their own North Star is, and that aligns, personal as well, professional things to it. And each person has their own set of parameters, the certain capabilities, the certain mission, whatever their mission is. So it's a difficult struggle to figure that out. My personal ambition was, from a professional sense, I really want to make an impact and really drive a lot of value to stakeholders and do that on a large scale. And so like macro impact, and I prefer to have real impact, and really that is something on a professional sense that drives me, and then also has to align personally with my kind of thoughts in mind and my partner's thoughts in mind, and so I came to Darden being, having qualified and met certain criteria that allow me to return to my family's business, but also understanding that, keeping my cards very open. So I recruited for private equity, got some offers there. And then my third option was kind of joining a corporate venture builder. So building corporate ventures. And so I had those three options. And then I pursued them. And I went for the corporate venture builder, which I did my internship in the summer. Turned out to be amazing. And I will return there starting in August. So, yeah.
Well, congratulations. That's awesome. Can we stick with your career story just a little bit more? So as you're considering these things, were there any like tactics or things that you did that you thought were really helpful to you to figure out which of these opportunities really resonated with you and really appealed?
It's an ongoing process. So it's like, I wouldn't say there's like one thing. Generally, it's a balance, right, between giving up on something and getting something. So like in private equity, I knew I would have to do 100 DCFs a day for a couple of years which would be fine with me. And I think I would learn a lot, and I would use that to then be in a role where I can have that impact where I want to be. But I knew that it will be, a couple of years of a lot of work and a lot of learning, which I was willing to do. But also I was eager to pretty quickly have an impact. So that was kind of the consideration with PE that I had to weigh. Also, I personally, I want to have more freedom than some of the folks I have met in private equity. And so in the sense that I want to have free time, spend more time with the family. So that was another consideration that was important to me. And then largely the impact I can have. And so those were kind of the three things probably that defined my decision. But again, each person is different. It's an ongoing process, and things change, and which is good. And but probably those three are the biggest consideration I had.
Well, the reason for the follow-up question, and I really appreciate what you shared there, is that there's a lot of self-reflection and introspection that goes into this. And it's not just like you do this before you start school and then you never check back, or just you reflect after your internship or whatever the case may be, that it is continuous, and your priorities may be different than another classmate's priorities.
Exactly. Yeah.
Which can sometimes be hard for people to accept. I think sometimes there's this thing in business school that happens for folks where maybe you focus externally more than listen to that internal voice at times. I think that's something that some students really wrestle with, particularly when it comes to career and things like academics.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially coming from Europe, where things work a little differently in terms of career, I think that can throw people off, and you can be quickly in that rat race, I want to say, where you hunt certain things, even though you might not really want it, and you just do it for the sake of being in the rat race. And it's very easy to fall into that, and very, very difficult to not be attracted by other people's North Stars, because it's obviously much easier to follow that than your own one, and it's a struggle to find your own one. But the cool thing is, I think Darden helped me a lot, at least, and helped other people a lot to figure out that North Star. And so I didn't have a super clear North Star, but most certainly, the community here, the school, was able to shape my idea much better and allow me to be like much more confident in order to be, okay, this is what I want to do. And I heard from others the same thing, that they also felt so confident that they were like, okay, actually, I don't want to do that, even though I thought I was going to do it. So I think the school gives a lot of thought into exactly that point, that everyone finds their own mission in life.
Was that the career coaches? Was it the second year coaches that work with students? Was it clubs and organizations? I mean, when you say that the Darden was helpful, I'm not surprised to hear that. I'm curious what resources or relationships were most useful to you as you sorted that out for yourself.
I mean, to be honest, it was the fellow students and the conversations you have over, a tea or coffee or a glass of wine that really shape you. Obviously, you get it different. You get a lot of information from clubs and the career coach, etc. But nothing really beats a good conversation with a friend who understands you and really listens to you. So at the end of the day, it's the fellow students that really shape it.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I appreciate you're entertaining my follow-up questions here about this, because I think it's really important for prospective students who are oftentimes listening to this podcast to hear about this work. So thank you for sharing, Niko. So second year is still a busy year, but you control your time a little bit more. You're choosing where to put your energy. You're picking your classes. Tell us a little bit more about what second year has been like for you.
Yeah, second year, I think everyone uses it differently, right? Some people jump into working on their own venture. Some people jump onto, really driving the community, helping clubs, helping the organization, or helping others. And so my kind of thing, personally, I was intrigued. Like this is my last year where I'm going to be like academically in an academic setting, most likely. And so I tried to challenge myself and push myself out of the comfort zone, and basically took classes that touch topics which I am not really where I need, to get up to a faster speed, or which I don't really feel comfortable exploring myself in my free time. So I focused a lot on like very detailed finance classes, data science, data analytics, things that I probably wouldn't discover myself. Like I wouldn't, force myself to get into in my free time. And so that was my core focus. Next to that, I took the time, honestly, to just process and prepare myself mentally for the next step. So I went on a lot of hikes with my partner, use the outdoors a lot, really make sure that I'm in a good state of mind. Other than that, I work with my family still. So that takes some time. The free time allows me to invest more time into certain projects where I want to invest more time. So that's kind of my three things I really try to focus on.
I think that's good. And we've heard this kind of like three things that you have time for kind of thing, and different advice related to how you can spend your time. I do think it varies between first year and second year. What I hear pretty consistently from the second year students is that they do feel like they have more space, more time to explore things like hobbies and interests. You may not feel that always during the core. So I want to stick with your classes for a second. Is there a class or two that really jumps out to you from this year that's been particularly interesting, exciting, or like you were surprised by this class, how much you enjoyed it?
I mean, this is a podcast for prospective students. I don't know if I'm selling the right classes now, but I really fell in love with the Mark Lipson International Finance class. I enjoyed taxation a lot. Currently in a class, taxation for merger and acquisition. I mean, it couldn't get more complicated than that, especially coming from a European background where taxation is completely different and the legal system is completely different too. So it's like it couldn't get more niche and detail orientated. But those are probably three classes that I really enjoy. I know I'm not. I know it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I truly enjoy getting into the weeds of all of it and kind of just exploring things I probably won't, go into that depth ever again.
Well, there's a lot of I think there's a few interesting things. One, there is no right answer to the what's been a favorite class for you. And I think it's good for students to hear the breadth of the curriculum, right? So we've had people come on and talk about all kinds of classes here. And I will say we haven't had a lot of people reference, the taxation focused classes, or and we have heard some of the more niche finance classes. But one of the things I love about what you shared in terms of how you were selecting your classes is that it came from this place of learning and curiosity and like stretching yourself. As you might imagine, Niko, we get a lot of questions from prospective students who are really kind of focused on concentrating or specializing in that second year. And one of the things we oftentimes will share as an admissions committee is, well, for some Darden students, that might be really driving their course selection. But in my experience, I actually hear more of your story when people choose their electives. It's like, I just wanted to take a class with this faculty member, or this topic seemed interesting, or when was going to be the next time I could take a class like this? Probably never. So I wanted to take that class. Any advice, anything that you would share with listeners who kind of really focused on specializing or thinking about concentrating?
I mean, it comes back to your first point, right? Continue to reflect. And so things change. Things change constantly, which is good, I think. But it's important to reflect. And so I changed some of my classes based on some of the ideas I had, or some of the comments by my fellow classmates who were in second year, or who now took certain classes in previous quarters that I now take, etc. So like, just be open, listen to yourself, listen to others, and then use that information to make a decision. But I generally wouldn't think in concentrations. I think concentrations are great, but like I think at the end of the day, everyone has their own concentration, and so it's important to figure out what your own concentration will look like. And most likely you're going to hit a concentration, but that's really not the point. The point is to really use the second year to kind of round up your concentration.
The other thing that I'm curious about is, are you surprised that you've enjoyed these classes? Like, is there, you look back on your life, you look back on your experiences. You mentioned your undergraduate background. It was in business-related topics. But are you surprised that you've really enjoyed these more detail-oriented finance classes?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely surprised and confused at the same time. No. I mean, the faculty does such a great job, and I think the case method really helps there. But I'm definitely surprised, and I actually enjoy it a lot. And over the summer, working with corporate ventures, you have to build, the business model from scratch. So then, like, I generally enjoy sitting late at night in front of my Excel now and just working things out, thinking about where revenue comes from, how the cost should kind of flow, etc. So, surprised, scared, confused, definitely all of it. But really, really glad that I discovered that kind of side.
I think you make a lot of good points about the value of stretching yourself in this kind of way, and sort of the self-discovery that comes with that. And you are learning from such incredible people here at Darden, and with such incredible people. Your classmates are also a big part of this story, undoubtedly too. So tell us a little bit more about what you're going to be doing after graduation. I think we've started to get a little bit of a sense of it based on what you shared previously, but for people who don't know what corporate ventures and what this kind of work looks like, would you mind sharing just a little bit more?
Yeah, so the idea is that research and development, if you look at the MSCI world, companies only spend 3 to 5% of their revenue in R&D. And R&D, is the biggest driver for change. Maybe environmental change, any kind of change is driven by R&D and innovation. And so 3 to 5% to me sounds too little. And so the ideas of a corporate venture is to use a corporate asset base, so the properties a corporate already owns, and build a venture based on one of these properties or several properties and basically build a venture on a de-risk basis, because it already is built on a fundament that is healthy and stable. So because of that, you're able to scale much faster, and you're able to scale on a much lower risk profile and innovate on a much lower risk profile. And the idea is that you basically create this corporate venture as an independent venture. So you could theoretically take it public, you could sell it, or you can just keep it in the organization. And so that way you're really able to speed up innovation on a much lower risk basis. To me, what is appealing to me is, again, you're able to innovate much faster, and with much lower risk. And you work on very interesting topics on a day-to-day, but you also work with these big corporates that are used to very, historical processes, etc. So it's an interesting way, and it's most certainly kind of a mixture between creative work and I want to say like the old way how business is done, mixed with a lot of creativity and scalability and growth.
You mentioned when you went to the University of San Francisco for undergrad that you wanted to get really plugged in, and you did get plugged in with opportunities in the Silicon Valley related to VC. You mentioned recruiting for private equity. You talking about this corporate venture work. How did you learn about this as a thing? And then, how did this particular line of work, like when you look forward in your career, like how does this fit into your bigger vision for where you'd like to go?
Yeah, I might. So for your first question, so how does it align with like PE and all of that VC? I think so. Like PE is super interesting because it can create so much value, right? However, I don't like too much that it's sometimes not. The value add is sometimes difficult to find other than looking at certain things. So I like, for example, looking at synergies, etc. So I want to do more than that. So personally, that's something that in PE I struggle with. That I am a person, I want to add more value than just finding certain synergies or cutting certain costs, to say it blunt, right? And then VC, for me, the struggle is that you bet on a lot of horses, and then a couple of them, make up for the ones that didn't win. And so it is not really to me, it doesn't sound too sustainable, and it sounds a little bit vague and not very focused enough, which then PE would be, right? So it's too artsy in that respect, and PE is too non-artsy. And then so the corporate venture is quite in the middle, where you have the creativity and the artsiness of VC, and you have the structure of a PE firm. So and then to your second question, how did I find it? I met the founder and former CEO of BCG Digital Ventures at a conference a couple of years ago in LA. We talked about how I want to make an impact, but it's very difficult to really make a true impact. And then we got into conversations, and because of that, we kept in touch, and we continued to kind of try to challenge each other. He started another company called Nax, which works similar as BCG Digital Ventures, but has more firepower to it, in the sense that it has more access to liquidity through the public market, blockchain, as well as PE funds, and therefore is able to basically scale startups or corporate ventures even faster, and allows them to not be dependent on any intermediaries, and therefore live in an ecosystem that is self-sustaining and doesn't live off any intermediaries. That was very appealing to me, and something I thought was kind of mind-blowing. So I interviewed with them, and did my case interviews with them, and then I got in, and here we go.
Well, that sounds like a really cool company to go work for. I'm always so struck by all the interesting things that Darden graduates are getting to do post-graduation. When you look at this next opportunity, and we started this conversation, asking you sort of how you feel at this moment, and you said like you were really energized about what's to come for you. Can we look even further into the future? If you go out, 5, 10 plus years, where do you see yourself heading? What's your vision?
Yeah, so the plan is the next 5 years I will be working at that company, kind of working on developing corporate ventures. And then after that, my partner and I will move to Germany, and I will be working for my family's holding company, and then kind of use everything I learned to kind of fuel the growth there and have an impact there on a commodity I really enjoy, coffee, and really change the lives of a lot of people. And so that's the plan, to do 5 years here and then move back to Germany, and try to have an impact there.
I would think the coffee business would be fascinating. I mean, you've got a global supply chain. You have to get it to market. You've got to sell it somehow. A lot of competition in that particular area. There's some very well-known brands. There's some very niche brands. How do you want to define your brand? I mean, I think like the list goes on. Things. What's exciting to you about helping lead the family business?
Well, there's a lot of frictions there's a lot of frictions in general, especially like it's easy to point out the friction in the supply chain, right? You have a lot of intermediaries, and the farmer that creates so much value is not paid the value that he or she deserves. And so that's a huge friction. And like, if you're able to solve that, you help the farmer so much, you help the industry, you help the coffee quality, really anything. And so that just pointing out that like if you're able to solve how the farmer gets paid accordingly to the value they create, you are able to really have an impact for consumers by providing much better coffee, for the farmers by paying the fair share, for the environment because they can invest into much better plants that are much more, they don't need as much, chemicals or water, et cetera. So just looking into the supply chain itself, you have so many frictions that if you solve them, really have an impact on all stakeholders and drive so much value for us, but everyone else. And so the same you can apply to distribution chain, and so there's so many frictions that is very exciting, and to get to work and solve some of them.
As you were running through that list, the farmer, the environment, consumer, the industry, I was thinking about stakeholder theory and how you approach problems at Darden. So I'm curious about how those kind of classes, and maybe this is general orientation of the program, has been helpful to you in kind of thinking about problems in that way.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I'm much better at structuring my thought and structuring process, and therefore better analyzing the flaws or the frictions in the system, and then be able to identify them and solve, and be able to work on solving them. And so, Ed Friedman is an awesome professor, and I speak to him a lot. At the end of the day, the biggest driver of monetary value is if you able to solve big problems, right? And if you create a good product or service, you, as a shareholder, make a lot of money if you are actually able to solve a problem with providing a good solution. And so that's what we're trying to do. I think there's so much potential to do so. And most certainly Darden helped me a lot to prepare me to do so by better analyzing problems, better learning about tools, how to solve these problems, by having a community that I can tap into if necessary, or that provides me professional advice. And then next to that, it's just like the professors as well and the whole organization. I know that they're behind me, and I can kind of use them in a sense to try to solve some of these problems.
Well, Niko, last question for you. What's one piece of advice that you would share with our prospective student listeners, people who are thinking about an MBA, maybe thinking about Darden, or maybe even preparing to start school come August? What would you highlight for them?
I mean, it's easy to get distracted in this world where things are so fast, where everything moves so fast. But I think it's important to slow sometimes things down, because it makes you see things that sometimes you don't see because you're so much you're so much surrounded by this fast pace that it's very easy to lose sight of certain things. So I think for any kind of student or any person, it's important to take the time, really reflect, figure out what you want in your personal life, professional life, and then do whatever is necessary for you to reflect. Maybe a journal, or maybe go on a walk, and then I think that will help a lot in order to succeed in your personal and professional life. I know it's very, very vague and broad advice, but I think especially at Darden, it goes even faster. So it's important that before you maybe go to Darden, that you take the minute to think about it before being in an environment that is so fast.
I think that's great advice. Even if it is broad, I think it's still important. I mean, it's when we talk with prospective students about what makes an application really stand out, and differentiates, one application from another. It is typically reflection and introspection, and the applicant's understanding of who they are and why they want to take this step. And it's very clear, the applicants who've done that kind of hard work. It's not easy asking these questions, but there's so much value in it. I think you did a great job, Niko, talking about why it's important in your career process, why it's important in the academic experience, and having that North Star, and accepting that, where you start with that work is maybe not necessarily where you're going to end, and it's all part of an ongoing process. And the people who can be helpful along the way include everybody from alumni, employers, faculty, to even your classmates, or maybe particularly your classmates, as you have conversations with them about who they are, what they want to do, and what they're really passionate about. And so I so enjoyed this conversation. I learned something new every time I host one of these interviews, and I didn't know too much about corporate ventures before this conversation. So thank you, Niko, for teaching me about something new.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Most certainly, you have summarized my thoughts much better than I could have expressed them. So I thank you for that. But yeah, no, it's been very pleasant. And thank you for having me.
And that was my interview with Nikolaus Jacobs, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2022. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's DARDEN, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.